This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. President Bush delivered the State of the Union Monday, the last of his presidency. The president claimed success in the U.S. occupation of Iraq, touting the so-called troop surge he announced 1 year ago. Bush also repeated his threatening rhetoric against Iran, vowing to confront those who challenge what he called, quote, our vital interests in the Persian Gulf. On the domestic front, Bush proposed spending $300 million to send low-income children to private or religious schools, while at the same time calling on Congress to reauthorize the No Child Left Behind Act. Bush also urged lawmakers to approve a new surveillance bill that would grant immunity to telecom companies that aided warrantless spying on U.S. citizens. And for the first time in a State of the Union speech since 2006, the president mentioned the ongoing recovery efforts on the Gulf Coast. Bush announced this year's North American Leaders Summit with Mexico and Canada will be held in New Orleans. But Bush opened his speech on the nation's economy, the top issue among voters, according to polls. Bush urged Congress to make his tax cuts permanent and approve the economic stimulus deal reached last week with House Democrats.
As we meet tonight, our economy is undergoing a period of uncertainty. America has added jobs for a record 52 straight months, but jobs are now growing at a slower pace. Wages are up, but so are prices for food and gas. Exports are rising, but the housing market has declined. At kitchen tables across our country, there is a concern about our economic future. In the long run, Americans can be confident about our economic growth, but in the short run, we can all see that growth is slowing. So last week, my administration reached agreement with Speaker Pelosi and Republican leader Boehner on a robust growth package that includes tax relief for individuals and families and incentives for business investment. The temptation will be to load up the bill. That would delay it or derail it, and neither option is acceptable. This is a good agreement that will keep our economy growing and our people working, and this Congress must pass it as soon as possible.
As part of the compromise, House Democrats agreed to Bush's refusal to include additional funding for food stamps and unemployment benefits. But the plan faces opposition in the Senate, where Democrats are already rebuffing Bush's plea for unfettered approval. Hours before the State of the Union, Senate Finance Committee Chair Max Baucus of Montana unveiled a plan that would boost individual tax rebates to $500 and extend unemployment benefits for 13 weeks. Other Senate Democrats are vowing to add more provisions, including heating assistance and food stamps for low-income Americans. To talk more about the State of the Union and the economy, I'm joined now by Kathleen Newman, professor of sociology and public affairs at Princeton University. Her latest book is The Missing Class: Portraits of the Near Poor in America. On the phone with us, we are joined by Barbara Ehrenreich, well-known commentator, writer, author. Her latest book is called Nickel and Dimed. Kathleen Newman, let's begin with you. Your response to the stimulus package and the state of the economy today.
Well, the stimulus package will certainly help the missing class, that is the nation's near poor, who are families of four at 20 to 40,000. It will help them because they need the money that will come to them by virtue of being in the working poor. But it's not going to rescue the economy, and as a consequence, the kinds of jobs that they have are likely to ratchet up in unemployment, and that's going to have a deleterious effect on them. The absence of the S-chip bill, which would have had a hugely positive effect on the near poor, is a real tragedy, and I expect we will revisit it. So there wasn't a whole lot in this for them, and I don't think the stimulus package is going to stimulate.
Explain S-chip.
S-chip was the bill that would have extended child health insurance, and it's especially important for the group of people that I wrote about because they are the ones whose employers don't provide health care, but they earn too much to qualify for Medicaid. And that's the group, which is over 50 million Americans in the near poor, who would have really benefited from the S-chip bill.
Barbara Ehrenreich, your book is called Nickel and Dimed. Can you talk about President Bush and what he is proposing as latest the last speech that he gives in his State of the Union, your last book called Baited and Switch.
Well, he's just, excuse me, pushing the same stimulus package that went through the House, which is, I think, terribly inadequate on many levels, in some ways, as Catherine has mentioned. But there's a possibility that the Senate will leap ahead and add extended unemployment insurance, an expansion of the food stamp allotment, and some other things that would really help the people who are hurting most economically now. But I think, there's a real failure, of course, on his part to realize that the economic problems are really beyond stimulus right now. That, this huge category of the working poor, or the poor plus what Kathleen Newman calls the missing class, this is part of the problem for the whole economy. This is where the credit crisis arose with foreclosures, mostly among people at that economic bracket. This is where consumption has been going down, as we saw very vividly at Christmas time. So if you don't address that fundamental inequality, you're going to continue to have a big problem in this economy.
Barbara Ehrenreich is author of Bait and Switch, The Futile Pursuit of the American Dream. Catherine Newman, yes, your book is called The Missing Class. Who are they?
They are the near poor, over 50 million Americans who are above the poverty line but well below the middle class, and they tend to be forgotten almost all the time. They are earning too much to qualify for most of the benefits that we provide for the real poor, but they don't earn enough to be completely secure. And as a result, they're very vulnerable in an economy like this. They tend to be service sector workers, and when contractions occur and unemployment rises, they are often the first to feel the brunt. But they are really the future of the nation. If they can't make it, really no one can, and that includes more than 20% of the nation's children who fall into this group.
The president gave slight mention to the nation's housing crisis, but did not directly reference the surge in subprime mortgages that have sent home foreclosures to record highs.
On housing, we must trust Americans with the responsibility of homeownership and empower them to weather turbulent times in the housing market. My administration brought together the Hope Now Alliance, which is helping many struggling homeowners avoid foreclosure. And Congress can help even more. Tonight, I ask you to pass legislation to reform Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, modernize the Federal Housing Administration, and allow state housing agencies to issue tax-free bonds to help homeowners refinance their mortgages. These are difficult times for many American families, and by taking these steps, we can help more of them keep their homes.
President Bush, in his last State of the Union, Catherine Newman, homes, the housing crisis, what some call the subprime crimes.
We actually saw a remarkable surge in the proportion of the Americans' low-income families who became homeowners in the last 10 years or so. And I expect we're going to see their equity almost completely wiped out, which will be a terrible tragedy for them, since they require that private safety net just like everyone else does for supporting their health care needs, their retirement, their children's college possibilities, and they are the ones who are going to lose their equity and lose their homes. There's something like 2 million households going into foreclosure. The rescue packages that have been passed so far will affect about 200,000 of them. It's paltry. And the wipeout in the inner city, where we actually saw some improvement because of increased home ownership, is going to be quite devastating.
Barbara Ehrenreich, your comment on the subprime crisis and overall what homes mean and what President Bush means for those who own homes in America.
Well, the crisis, I think, was that finance capital got extraordinarily greedy when it decided it could make a lot of money off of people who are basically poor. However we want to, near poor, missing class, working poor, whatever, and leaped onto them with these dodgy high-interest loans. That's part of, what increased home ownership, or at least will have increased it rather temporarily. But I think, it all comes back to, the huge inequalities in our society that mean that so many people work very, very hard year-round, often with more than one job, and can't get ahead. Now, this has always been seen as some sort of an anomaly of the American society. You know, from outside of our country, it's been seen, well, that's strange. They have all these people who can't get ahead. But now it's become an international problem because this has helped that poverty, you know, through the subprime crisis, has helped contribute to turmoil in the international markets.
On taxes, President Bush urged Congress to make his tax cuts permanent. He said he would veto any tax increases passed by Congress.
Most Americans think their taxes are high enough. With all the other pressures on their finances, American families should not have to worry about the federal government taking a bigger bite out of their paychecks. There's only one way to eliminate this uncertainty: make the tax relief permanent.